So, thank you very much. Let me also welcome you to my presentation about our experiences we made while we were porting our application to the Mac OSX. What we are talking about is this box, the final installment. We are a German company building tax return software for the German market. It's so only in German, the software, and it's dedicated to end users. So it's not for tax specialists, it's for everybody in Germany who's doing their, or have to do that tax return once a year, can use our software to get helped, to get any help on doing this. So I have 3 boxes of this program with me, so at the end we will have time for some questions, and the first 3 questions I get will get one for free for Mac. But for all the other guys who are not so lucky to have the first 3 questions, I have some vouchers with me where you get 10 euros discount when you buy our software over our online shop. Yeah, right. So, small overview about what I'm going to talk about. First, I will give you an overview where we started. When the experience for us, nobody at my company had any experience with a Mac. Nobody. No, not one developer had ever hands on a Mac, or only from far. Maybe somebody had an iPad or something, but no application experience on a Mac. And so I will talk a bit about how you get help, and I can only recommend it to get you help. We will get there. I will talk about build system, version control, and customer support. So, some words about me. My name is Sven Bergner. I'm 38 years old and a full-time developer at Akademische Arbeitsgemeinschaft, which is a German company seated in Mannheim. That's between Frankfurt and Heidelberg. And we are part of Wolters Kluwer Deutschland, which is a huge publishing house. We're doing some things about money, taxes, and law. And one part of these products we do are this software. So we're more a publishing house than a software house. But as a guideline, or as a, I will come to that once later. So where we started. The project is now 70s, exactly, it's 18 years old. We just shipped 18.1 these days. So we increment the version number once a year. So you can see on the version number how old this project is. It started as a 16-bit Windows version and was then developed 30 bits starting around 2001, 2002. We had our first look at Qt. So you see, we have more than 10 years Qt experience in this company. It was my part to suggest Qt and to bring it in. I did the first conversations, the first porting from an old Berlin compiler, which wasn't able to compile our project anymore because it was too big. We can't do debugging in the whole application back then because it was too big for the debugger. You can't. Back then you could only debug in some subsystems, and you had to activate the debugger for this subsection to get something debugged. It was really hard. It wasn't doable with this compiler anymore. It wasn't supported by Berlin back then. And so there was the wish to switch to Visual Studio. And at this time, I suggested using Qt as a new GUI tool kit. And also back then we had the idea to bring out the Linux version, which we haven't done because of several reasons. By the way, I had forgot somebody. My sidekick, Till Adam. I will talk about him in a few slides when I talk about getting some help. So this project started 18 years ago, had 300,000 lines of code, and it was a crude mixture of STL, MFC, Windows API, and a huge amount of Qt. 85% was, by rule of thumb, I would say, was already Qt code, but these 15% gave us a big headache. We just, before we started porting, we just switched from Visual Source Safe to the TFS as a source code repository. That turned out was not the best solution. And as I said before, we had no experience on the Mac. So, as we come to the Mac, we had to learn many new things. So there are several hardware, though we bought a selection of tools of 13-inch, a 15-inch, a 17-inch MacBook Pro. We had a Mac Mini that we used via a TeamViewer as a to work remote with it, just for testing. So not everybody in our company has got a new MacBook, only the developers who needed it really to do. And so our tax-oriented developers are using it remote just to test out some things when we put a new version out. So then the biggest problem you will get when you come to Mac. Apple has a very own, how would I say, very own point of view how to bring new versions and how to support old versions. Apple throws you a huge amount of updates. Once a year you get a new update of Mac OSX, and not every customer you have will go this way and do every update. Even in Germany, people are, how will I say, conservative. So they invested money, bought a laptop based on a MacBook Pro, for example, based on 10.5, and have no intention to update every year their operating system. And so this was our first problem. When we bought our first MacBook, we had 10.6. And the customer called and said, how about supporting 10.5? Well, we couldn't do that. We had no system based on 10.5, and we said we can't, even if we could build a version that would run probably on 10.5, we can't give the support because we can't test it. And if you go to Apple, you can't get, you can only buy the newest version. So that's a problem you have to work with, or you have to tell your customer, I'm sorry, we can only give you where we started. So we started on 10.6. And we have one MacBook Pro which won't be touched in kind of updating. These will, on this machine, we build our releases till today to be sure that we can support versions beginning with 10.6, because there are customers who are asking for versions starting with 10.6. So now we're on our way, we're developing. Then the next, the first time we just bought 4 Macs, it was just for testing, but we needed more. We are more developers, we needed some more machines, so every developer should have its dedicated machine. And so the first machines came with 10.7 on it. And there's you getting a new OS X, then you start Xcode because you need it to build Qt or to build your application. Then Xcode says you, oh, we have a newer version. Next problem. Newer versions of Xcode has a newer GCC or LLVM. And so you have to deal with different compilers, but I will have a slide later because we'll talk about these problems with compilers. Four. Okay. 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 Yeah, that's correct. I have to say I'm a Linux guy. I've first came in touch with KDE back in 1997 when KDE came out on Linux, and it's really getting harder to use Linux on a daily desktop machine. Getting running. I'm really was some kind of Linux evangelist. I'm really not into, and it's even for me. It was getting harder and harder to run it, and as Till sometimes said to me, and I had to agree with him. He said the Mac is a Unix machine which just works, and that's right. I have everything I loved about Linux. I have the command line, I have all the tools, I have open software, but the base system is just up and running, and that's what I today need. Back then, when I was studying, I had enough spare time to fiddle around with Linux, but today I just want to have a machine which I can turn on and work with. So, yeah. 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 And as I have here on the slide, Gatekeeper was introduced in 10.7, but it was not on by default, and that changed in 10.8. And even the settings have a little bit changed, so it's and what was much worse than Gatekeeper is that sandboxing, which you have to turn on when you like to get your application into the App Store. Genau, that's my next slide, getting into the App Store. Um, it's a truth. If you want to have a successful application, you have to sell it over the App Store. Many people rely on the App Store, and it's a real high barrier to get into the App Store. And it was some kind of try and error for us, because you have a bunch of guidelines from Apple how you would have to do your app bundling, but at the end you have your package, think, oh, everything okay, load it up into the App Store, and then you get some kind of email which tells you your package is rejected, and then you start guessing what they're trying to tell you. And at one point we had a nice email which told us that we were spamming the App Store, because they sent us an email back, something was wrong. We changed something in the app bundle, tried to what we thought they were talking about, what were wrong. But we never came to that point that there were complain about our app bundle, our nested app bundles. Our software works that we have some kind of, it's called Start Center, so there you can choose what kind of taxes you want to work with. And these was one app bundle, and inside this app bundle of the Start Center, there are the app bundle of the actual app you want to work with. And this is not allowed by Apple, and that was our problem, and there were no clear email from Apple who told us don't nest these app bundles. And that was a huge amount of work to solve this problem with this nested app bundles. At the end, we have no nested app bundle anymore, because we've put two programs in one. So if you buy our software over the App Store, you have only one app bundle, one executable, which shows first the Start Center and then switches into the real application, just into one app bundle, instead of calling an app bundle from another. So, ist das doppelt? Ja. So, next point you have to deal with. Maybe somebody of you had yesterday seen the presentation from James, who was talking about how a application has to look like on the Mac, and that's really a problem. We had chosen some years ago to base our UI on plastique style, which is a standard style in Qt, because we liked it more than the standard Windows style. And all our tweaks of the UI were based on this style. Now we came to a point where we had some help from KDAB, and there was one team member who is a Mac addict, Christoph Schleifenbaum, correct? And he told us, no, you have no chance to get this application bought to anybody on the Mac. And he started fiddling around to get us a little bit nearer to the look and feel of a Mac application. And that is really one point you have to keep in mind if you start porting your application to the Mac. Yeah. Mm. So one suggestion I would make, if you have the time and if your actual application you have, um, try to write a clear style for your Windows version and for your Mac version. Try to separate this as far as it goes. The mistake we made was we have one base style, but we have 20 other styles written for special cases, for a special window, and there's a style, and there's a style, and every style has its specialties. And so after porting to the Mac, or while porting to the Mac, we have many if-defs in these codes, which checks if-def Mac, if-def Windows, and do different things. And from today's perspective, I would flat that out and would say remove all styles we had before, write one style for Mac and one style for Windows. And that would make a lot of things much easier. So, next thing you would have to deal with is character encoding. Our runtime files are all code page 1252 based, and we had to work around this. We have special converting methods we have to call when we load files from disk, because on Mac everything is UTF-8. So you will have funny symbols if you have German umlauts and some things, if you don't do this conversation. Best way would if we had UTF-8 on Windows also, but that's not the case. Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Our problem is that we have the application we build as developers are just a framework. So the dialogues you see, all the help files you see, are all coming from different files which are written by our text developers, we call them. And these compilers, we written them all by ourselves. We have own languages for the dialogues, for the help files. And these compilers are Windows only, and they generate CP1252 encoding. And for long term, we are thinking about changing these compilers, but that were a step too far. So we just throw in a interface which does exactly what you said, and everything's okay. But you have to do this by loading the files. So, next problem. As we were talking about the slides, Till brought some story back to mind. Case-sensitive file systems. It is a real pitfall, and we get to know about it from a journalist from the Mac world who was testing our first application we gave out to a journalist, and he said he can't start our program. He's just segfolding after double clicking. And we said, why? We have it's great if you get such a result from a journalist who is about to write a test. And while chatting with this person on a sentence, he mentioned, oh yes, he has a case-sensitive file system on his Mac. So when you buy a Mac, the default HFS file system is not case-sensitive. But if you format your disk by yourself, you can set a flag. I would like to have a case-sensitive file system, because people who use Linux and Mac, vice versa, I believe that could be a reason to have a case-sensitive file system. But we were not aware of this. And so our program found some of the files not on the disk because the case was not the same. So think about this. People will have things which you don't have on your own. What's nice, just as a hint, you can have USB sticks with case-sensitive file systems on it. So for testing if our solution works, we had just USB sticks formatted with HFS plus with a case-sensitive file system, and then we could test if the program would work on such a file system. And that's real handy. Oh, next point. What I mentioned earlier, with a little help from a friend, we were looking for some company who give us a hand. When you have no experience on the Mac, I only could recommend you call somebody who had these experiences. For what we did, as I mentioned before, we have many runtime files which we need to put into the app bundle. All these scripting, bash scripting, all this build system, and how to get an app bundle together that it works on a Mac would have taken too much time to figure that out by our own. So it was a real, it saves us many time, nerves and money to take somebody into the boat helping us getting this done. Even on this whole process importing, I just say KDAB because we asked them. There are surely other companies who can give you this experience, but they have the experience on how to start this whole project. On if it starts with if-defing code which wouldn't compile out, and just all these small steps to get you running application. We hadn't never made it there. Because years back we often had to look into porting to Linux and such things, and every year we tried to do it by ourselves. And after looking at the code and estimating how much work it is, every year we said it's not possible. And at some point the customer asking about a Mac version getting louder and louder, and if you look at the market share of Mac OSX, it was, we had to do it, but not alone. And so, just a recommendation, if you want to do this, ask somebody who knows what he's doing. If you're doing this, and if you have a partner who helps you, the contact to these people is mandatory. And to have these contact, we had an IRC client. We used Adium on Mac and Pigeon on Windows, and these IRC used a Jabber protocol, a Jabber server with history. History was quite handy because every developer could just one day later or after a weekend or even after vacation can look into this history and see what was talked about, which problems arised and which solutions were given. So a real recommendation that helped a lot. And and they hadn't. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, correct. Um, so that it was hosted at KDAB, and they have chat rooms for every project. So these projects can talk about internal things without any issues. Yeah. um, just to clarify that, it what the allowance is on our wired network in the company, the port was not open to use Java, and the IT wasn't said no, we are not going to open this port for you. It's insecure and all. And for wireless usage, we had a different. I believe it's just a DSL line, standard one with a wireless LAN port, and there they forgot to close this port, and so just by testing on a MacBook, I saw okay, MacBook wireless LAN works, and though we had to use, or we could use it in, even if the IT don't want us to use it. And it took more than a year and many telephone and many emails to convince them, and now we have also on the wire also on the wired network we have this port open, and we now can from Windows and from every machine use this. The other problem was we needed a wired LAN on the MacBooks to connect to our repository, and so you had to decide if you plug in the wired LAN to get your code or to chat over the wireless. Okay. So, next point, version control system. As I mentioned before, we just some weeks before changed to TFS, and then KDAB came and said, how could we get your code? And that was even not so easy. um, but we found a solution for that problem. TFS is not supported on Mac, but you can have a so-called subversion bridge. It is a tool which is open source, and you can install that on your TFS server, and that will act as a subversion server. So you can, with a standard subversion command line tool, check out, commit, and everything on this. Just one problem that arises on that subversion bridge has a documented bug, which seems to be very hard to fix because it's not fixed for many years, I believe. Because if you have deleting or renaming files in a special constellation, your repository gets out of sync, and you have to do a complete checkout to work again. But you can avoid that if you smaller the part you check out. I believe the main problem is if you have branches in your complete checkout. So if you check out each branch separately, it works. But if you have a base directory which contains the main branch and some other branches, and in some of the branches somebody is renaming or deleting files, it breaks your complete repository. But for the time I'm doing small checkouts, only the main branch or only other branches for themselves, it never came out of sync. Yeah. So. Now some words on the build system. Also, I mentioned some things before. You need Xcode installed to have all the command line tools, because I believe you would use QtCreator, and QtCreator only calls these command line tools, so you have to install Xcode to have it. Yeah, and then you have the problem that every Xcode version, or not every, but once in a while, with newer Xcode versions, you get newer command line tools, and even if you have other platforms, as on our behalf, Visual Studio 2010, you need to get the smallest subset on C++ features you can use. But you will, after checking out and compiling, you would you will see what will not work. Yeah. Okay. And other problem I raised was after updating from Mac OS 10.7 to 10.8, Xcode came up and said, oh, you need a new version of Xcode, okay, updated. And then I started QtCreator and said build, and QtCreator said there's no GCC, there's no LLVM. Um, no, had no idea, and after some investigation I found that Xcode removed all the command line tools, and you had to go into the settings of Xcode, where is a tab where you could say please download the command line tools, because they integrated the compiler in a different way. I have no idea. So it seems that Xcode as an IDE doesn't use the command line tools anymore, and so you had, if you need it for things like Qt Creator, you have to download it separately after updating Xcode. So. Ah, okay. Ah. So the next problem we raised was you have different build systems on Mac and on Windows. On Windows you have your Visual Studio, which has VCX project files on Visual Studio 2010 and uses nmake. On Qt Creator you use qmake, profiles, and make as a build tool. First idea was, or the first thing everybody thinks about is we want to minimize the effort of building on both systems. So we were looking for integrated solutions to convert one build system into the other to reflect adding new files, removing files, such things. After some time we dropped it. We found no suitable solution. So you have just to manually keep up your two systems. For us, it's Visual Studio, and Windows is our main development platform. And if you add new files on Windows, you will get linker errors when you next time build your Mac version, and so you have to add these files to the profiles, and it's working again. So that was the only suitable way for us. It's not that hard if you have your base files. What you can use, there's an add-on for Visual Studio which can give you an initial profile to convert your Visual Studio project file into a QMake file that you can take once to have a basis, but after that keep it in sync by hand. Or that. That's a suggestion on my next slide. And because of the complexity of the build system, which I mentioned before, the app bundle has to have many runtime files into. It wasn't suitable to use this shadow build system, which uses Creator by default to have a release and a debug build. But you can have these rules for debug and release builds also inside your profile for QMake, and that was the way we go to differentiate between between debug and release build. without using shadow build. So, and yeah, today they think about using CMake. I've just seen the presentation before this about CMake, and if I had to redo it, or even thinking about changing our existing build system into CMake. And on the other hand, how often do you add new files to a project? It's not an everyday concern. So, just some words about customer support. You surely will have to do that. We use a tool named NetViewer, which can bring you the desktop of your customer over the internet into your desktop. And we had to update our local tools to use it because Mac OSX 10.8 broke these tools and there was an update. And then we built our own so-called report tool, which is a tool who collects some information about the Mac your customer is using, system variables, and which CPU and such things. We also use this report tool while we do our beta test. Once a year we do a big beta test with our customers, which we send emails to around about 5,000 users, and they can say, okay, we like to do them beta testing, and this report tool has the ability to ask questions, please test this, that, and you can put scripts in there and type your answer or your experience you made. Thank you. Oh, or can we afterwards? Okay.